It's SMX Insider, and Monster Energy Supercross is back. Is there still time for Chase Sexton to get in the title fight? Of course there is, and we'll tell you why, especially with a Triple Crown en route this weekend in Birmingham. Yeah, Monster Energy AMA Supercross is back, and so are the SMX Insiders. Jason Weigandt, Jason Thomas, SuperMotocross World Championship, first weekend off of the year, now back at a Triple Crown in Birmingham, JT. And I know when people last tuned into this at Indy, Cooper Webb dominated the race. He stretched his points lead to 15 over Chase Sexton. But I am not convinced, even with the uber-consistent master of championship management, Cooper Webb, I still think we're in for more surprises. 15 points to me is not a lot with 8 Supercross rounds to go. What do you think?
Well, I think if you ran a poll and you talked to the average SMX fan, they would think that Cooper Webb has this in hand. He had such a dominating win in Indy. And I think for some, it felt like a nail in the coffin. But let me assure you, it only feels that way. And I think if you ask Cooper Webb himself, he would tell you, hey, all this can change on a dime. If I crash in the first corner, if I had a crash like I did in qualifying practice on Saturday at Indy, all of this changes in an instant. I could be 10 points down just as easily as I'm 15 points ahead. So he is acutely aware of that. And I always think that when the racers are very aware of the situation, that's what we should be plugged into. So don't let the 15-point gap lull you to sleep. I think we're in for some serious surprises down the stretch. And I'm not saying that Cooper Webb won't win this championship. Of course, he likes having the 15-point lead, but there is a lot of racing left to go. And assuming anything would be very foolish from here.
Yeah, I think the only fear is that Sexton's margin for error at this point is very slim. If he has a bad one, then the math really switches to Webb's position. But 15 points, 8 rounds, it's still well up for grabs between the two of them. And we will have some stats upcoming on this show to reveal Sexton is usually a closer in this championship. We'll get into that and many other things. As I mentioned, a Triple Crown here in Birmingham. We'll talk about the racetrack. And 250 East, the quiet assassin, Tom Vial on top. See if he can hold on. He did win the Birmingham race last year. All that and more as we preview this weekend's event. Big interview time here on SMX Insider. This is a fun one. Barrett Sally, who is people probably think as a what we would call stick and ball or traditional sports broadcaster, is also a huge fan of SMX. So we're going to talk both sides of the sports ledger today. Barrett, you're handling the pre- and post-game shows for the Atlanta Braves this year, and also on Sirius XM handling NCAA college sports. So I don't understand how you're fitting this in. March Madness is literally starting right now. How are you still following Supercross? I feel like you should be too busy for us.
Well, I should be, but I am fully okay with neglecting some jobs that I have to do in order to watch Supercross. I mean, you know, I have multiple TVs in my basement, so if there's a race on Saturday night, I love watching it. I will put it on one of the smaller TVs because obviously duty calls, but it's no matter what, I will find a way to watch it. And honestly, Weege, when it's on, I kind of gravitate towards it anyway, because look, we can find basketball, baseball, football stuff on the internet immediately following. I want to know what happens in the race every single week. So I won't say that I'm neglecting my other jobs, my permanent jobs, but I kind of am.
You know, you're so enthralled in these other sports, but you're watching this with a different, perspective than we have. What do you make of this 2025 campaign?
Dude, I no joke, when Malcolm won in Tampa, I was jumping up and down. We had people at my house. We were watching something. And I had to flip it over. When Malcolm was, when he, I guess, halfway through, I was like, there's no friggin' way this is going to happen. No way. So, that was really cool. But it kind of feels like it is Cooper's. I think Roxon still has something for him. Chase, I like Chase a lot, but it seems like he regressed back a couple years to that dude who's just kind of in his head. I think he's the fastest guy on the track pretty much all the time, but he's in his head way too much, and I think Cooper knows that, and Cooper has a tendency to take advantage of situations like that. It seems like, I kind of call him like the Predator. You see him coming, he's coming, and you can't do anything about it. So it's been fun. I'm fascinated to see what happens in the Northeast swing. because those are, to me, it kind of seems that dirt there is a little different. Maybe it does favor some of the other guys a little bit more because it doesn't get as rutted up. But it's been fun. I love to see Cooper ride, and if he gets a whole shot, it's dangerous.
Hey, Barrett, since you're so experienced in those traditional sports, which almost always have a playoff, and certainly on the college football side, that's become a larger and larger part of that landscape.
Yes.
So playoffs come into SMX for the last 2 years. You've been following this sport your entire life. So what's your take on what you've seen from that so far?
I think it's a really cool idea to mix Supercross and Motocross to determine a real champ, because they're different sports almost, right? You have to have different skill sets. I love the idea and I love the execution, and it's been, racing on a drag strip. I never even thought of that. I never even thought logistically how you would do that. And to see that as sort of the hybrid between Supercross and Motocross, I was like, oh, wow. Like, they pulled this off. That makes a ton of sense. So, doing that is really cool. It's awesome to see a champion crowned through all of this, because, Chase was awesome in outdoors last year, especially toward the end of the season when he got red hot. I think it's been a real treat to the sport to have something that is tangible, a trophy that it's almost like the Super Bowl or the national championship. Yeah, you win an SEC championship. Well, Florida doesn't. Sorry, JT. But you win an SEC championship, you win a Big Ten championship, and then you go to the playoffs, and it's a totally different animal, right? It's a totally different kind of approach for football teams, and to me, it's sort of the same thing there. And so I love it. I think it's been a huge success. Casual fans will be like, okay, do the same riders race Supercross and outdoor nationals? What's the difference? Like, why are you having two? Like, what's the deal? Like, why are there two seasons? And so to bring them together like that, is something that I think is very valuable, especially to casual fans who can see that and be like, oh, okay, I get it. I understand it now.
30-second board time. These are hot topics headed toward Birmingham this weekend. Final Triple Crown in Monster Energy Supercross, and the only time, JT, the 250 East riders are going to race a Triple Crown. We love the format. Give us a little review.
Well, I think Triple Crowns are the best product we have. I know they're difficult on the riders. I know they're difficult on the teams, but if you're talking about the best bang for your buck entertainment value, how can you beat a Triple Crown? 3 races that all matter between each class. You just truly can't beat that. And the action just keeps coming. That's my favorite part of it. There's really no downtime. You have to use your restroom. You better be really quick because Triple Crowns just keep coming. It's my favorite part. And I want to put a little suggestion in the suggestion box. For 2026, can we get a Triple Crown showdown?
Oh,
I don't know if many people can handle that level of excitement, but I am so here for it if we could work that into the schedule.
it would be pretty wild. I was talking to someone at Red Bull KTM over the weekend who has to drive extra bikes from Florida to Birmingham because teams have 2 bikes. They have a backup bike due to the lack of time in between races if they have a bike problem. Yeah, I want to see those 250 teams pack it in. That would be absolutely wild. Maybe next year. But this weekend, it'll be interesting. Just think back to that 250 Triple Crown at Glendale and how many ups and downs we saw. Expect more of that in 250 East Division this weekend. And speaking of the Birmingham event, tell us about the track, JT.
Well, Birmingham, if it looks similar to Snapdragon Stadium, it's because it is very similar. Same architect here, but the track itself, pretty standard. Now, you got a pretty long start, left-hander right in the center of the course, but a couple of things stand out to me. If you're Justin Cooper and Cooper Webb, you love that short whoop section. Not a lot of real room there to get any speed, to make passes. So they're going to be able to defend there, and it's not going to be a liability for them also. You see that long left-hand sand corner. That should be pretty interesting. But I think what's going to happen, though, all the riders are going to stick to the inside there. And there's one interesting thing. You see a triple jump before the over-under bridge. I want to see if anybody could get creative there and double and then jump up on top of that bridge. But overall, great racetrack. I think the weather's going to cooperate. So we're going to get an exciting weekend.
That sand turn really sticks out to me when I look at the map. And by the way, when you mention Justin Cooper and those short whoops, the great Justin Brayton, Race Day Live host, has been dispatched to help Justin Cooper in whoops. And JT, Justin Cooper's been getting better. The last 2 races, his best races so far in 2025, maybe his best races ever in 450 Supercross. So we'll see how it plays out. And that's just some of the things you have to have on your mind. But if you want real expertise at the top, let's go to 2 of them that know how it works.
Alrighty, James. Let's talk Birmingham. We got Cooper Webb and Chase Sexton in a title battle. The odds makers have Cooper Webb at a -273. They got Chase Sexton at a +230. Clearly, Webb's the title favorite here. What do you see between these 2 riders?
Well, I see one thing, obviously with Cooper Webb, he's got the momentum. I mean, what we saw last time we were out racing was dominant. And that being said, I think Chase Sexton has to come out and must win, I would say, all 3 races this weekend. Can't have what he did in, Arizona, where he ends up getting the overall without winning the race. I think he has to come out and really dominate these guys and not only get the maximum points, but really just kind of show Cooper Webb that he's back in this title hunt. And so for me, moving forward for the championship, it's going to be a must win for Chase Sexton this weekend.
All right, James, let's talk head to head. 2 weeks ago, we had Justin Cooper, Aaron Plessinger. You gave us some great insights on Justin Cooper, and then he went out and delivered with a 2nd place. Going into Birmingham, we've got Justin Barcia and Malcolm Stewart going head to head. Justin's got a -103. Malcolm's got a -129 on the line. They're giving a slight advantage to your brother, Malcolm. What do you see between these 2 riders?
Well, I see one's a lot bigger than the other one when you talk about Malcolm Stewart, but I think the advantage goes from what Malcolm did a few weeks ago in Tampa. You can never discount how much a win actually gives a rider confidence. And even though Justin Barcia's riding really good, he had his best finish of the year the last time we were out. Still think Malcolm in this format, everything that's been going for him this year, he's got a couple heat race wins, and we know the Triple Crown's kind of like a heat race format. I'm going to get a slight advantage to my brother, although Justin Barcia should be strong this weekend as well.
Yeah, and obviously that 4th in Indy was pretty impressive by Barcia, but man, those vibes from that Tampa win for Malcolm were pretty great. Hey, go check out your local sports book. The lines will shift throughout the week. And James, looking forward to watching this Triple Crown in Birmingham.
All right, thanks, boys. And from one set of numbers to another as we resume the 30-second board, JT, between both classes, 250 and 450 this year, 14 different riders have won. That is the most ever through this amount of races. That's crazy. I know 14's a lot in that many rounds, but most ever, impressive.
Well, I think there are several variables at play, and I'd love for Clinton Fowler to be on this segment because he always thinks, we're going to have 3 winners, 5 winners.
That's right.
No, we're breaking records here. And I think you have some riders that have won early and that have had injuries, Jets, Tomax, and those guys, they've exited. We have a bunch of new talent moving into the 250 class, and there hasn't been a lot of domination in either class. So when you couple all those things together, you're going to get new winners. You're going to have the old guard really showing up. And when injuries come into it as a 3rd variable, it just adds more opportunity for someone to get in there and sneak into a win. So if you like variety, if you have maybe an underdog guy that you've been cheering for that you want to see win, this might be your year because the unexpected should be expected in 2025.
Yeah, we just saw that at Indy with Seth Hamaker getting his first win since 2021. That's the type of stuff we've seen all year. We will have Clinton on the show, and you and I will chat with him later, but let's just attack him unexpected. He wasn't expecting to talk about how many winners he inaccurately predicted we'd get this year, but maybe we'll hit him with that. So stay tuned for later in the show. And there's more unpredictability coming, JT, because at the very top, we talked about 15-point lead for Cooper Webb, 8 races. But it's more than just 8 races. It's 8 races, all in uncovered stadiums, and JT, all areas that could have some weather. So that could throw a wrench in all of it.
Well, Weege, I know you hate this segment because you are the champion of we're very unlikely to have a mud race. And you've been right over the years. But when you look at this setup, 8 in a row in the spring, a lot of those on the East Coast where weather changes by the minute, it's hard for me to think we're not going to have a weather situation at one of them. Now, your point all the time is that if it doesn't rain once they pull the tarps and in that racing window, the Dirtworks crew, SMX track crew, they're so good at maintaining this racetrack and preventing mud. So they're going to be put to the test. 8 in a row is a gauntlet that I don't know that anybody can withstand. And I just came back from Europe and walked around in mud for 48 hours straight. So I'm good with sunshine from here on out, but 8 in a row, that's going to throw some wrenches into some plans, because you think about who's good, who's bad. I think Sexton could really use an opportunity like that to upend the points if he gets into a bigger deficit than now.
Yeah, what drives me crazy is someone looking at their weather app on their phone on Tuesday and saying we're going to have a mud race on Saturday. Birmingham Friday last year was a deluge, and the track turned out pretty good actually on Saturday. So they can dodge that bullet quite a bit. But I'm going to actually side with you on this one. I don't think they can do it 8 times, especially throw in Seattle. And the fact that we've seen snow in Denver and Salt Lake before. I don't think 8 times we're going to avoid something. If you're Chase Sexton, probably the kind of something that you're looking forward to. Pretty wild how that works. Now, in this context, we're only talking Monster Energy Supercross, but it's probably not too early to start talking about SMX and the injuries you mentioned earlier in the show. We can look at the bubble here and some unexpected names well out of the top 10. Eli Tomac, Hunter Lawrence, Jet Lawrence. Seeding points do matter, and they're not collecting any right now.
Yeah, this is going to be a fluid situation that we're going to keep an eye on all the way through into Pro Motocross as we approach Charlotte. And what I find really interesting is if you look at the injuries, there are going to be riders that have success down the stretch in Monster Energy Supercross that are going to pass the likes of Jorge Prado, Hunter Lawrence, maybe even get up into the rare era of Eli Tomac, but they're going to have to be prepared to relinquish those positions back when those guys start throwing up podium finishes every weekend in Pro Motocross. So it's one of the, we've watched this since its inception, guys like Colt Nichols and Josh Hill going to the ends of the earth to get into this championship. I think more riders now have an inkling to how this plays out, and they need to capitalize on the opportunity in front of them right now and make up those points where they can get into the main event. A guy like Kevin Moranz is getting into those mains and scoring good points. You have to make the most of these opportunities now, and it will pay dividends this coming September.
And that bubble, that's just part of it. Everyone trying to figure out how to manage their health and injuries as the season goes on. All right, time for the SMX medical update. We bring Dr. Joe McGinley of the McGinley Clinic onto the show. Not going to talk specifically SMX right now. We're going to talk about its qualifier season for a lot of the workaday folks looking to qualify for the Monster Energy Amateur National at Loretta Lynn's. Now, that race is in August, so it seems like it's way off the radar. But Dr. Joe, you're saying actually not too early to start thinking about your prep for that.
That's correct. I mean, last year they had record numbers of individuals trying to qualify for Loretta's, tens of thousands of riders. The point being, if you're dealing with arm pump and you're dealing with it now in the area qualifiers, it's likely not going to get better by the time you're in the regionals or getting ready for Loretta's. Last year, what happened is we just got inundated, swamped with calls in late June and early July of riders calling, say, hey, I qualified for Loretta's, arm pump's really holding me back. Can you help me out? And we were able to help a lot of them, but in that tight of a time period, number one, the schedule gets just slammed. But more importantly, you want some time to be able to ride after we treat those forearms, so you know what they feel like. Make sure you have your strength back and make sure you're ready to go. So now's the time to start thinking about it, not late June, early July. That makes it a lot harder.
Okay, so let's put this in practical terms. I call you up today and say, I've got to get up to the clinic. I'm thinking about my regional qualifier that's going to be sometime in June. Say I fly up tomorrow, you execute this procedure. What does that time frame look like until I'm realistically back riding and preparing for that regional qualifier?
Yeah, so what was great about last year with some of these riders we were working with, we've been able to titrate the protocols to meet the needs of the riders. So, for one of the pros, actually last year during the Nationals, he flew out right after the Nationals. So he arrived here Sunday night. We treated him on Monday, and he raced the next National, the following Saturday. We can do it that quickly, but if you called and said, hey, the regionals are late May, that gives us a little bit more time to get you back on the bike, make sure you know what your arms are going to feel like. And what that means is when we're treating arm pump, we're blocking small pieces of the muscle. So it changes the muscle dynamics a little bit. Usually there's about a 1 week learning curve on that. So you have your strength back, you know how your arms are going to react when you're riding, and you're back at full speed and full confidence. If you have more time, obviously it's better. You're going to be more comfortable. You're going to be stronger and faster on the bike. So more time is better with the arm pump treatment, making sure that you're fully prepared for those important races.
Last thing for you, we saw you on hand at Indy, and I know that was a really fun one for you, not only with the McGinley Privateer Support Program, but speaking of Indy, an IndyCar driver you work with was with us as well.
He came out, we got him treated. He ended up winning the Pro 2000 championship last year, and then he signed on with Team Andretti for Indy next. In his rookie race, his first race, he got second place at St. Petersburg just a few weeks ago. So he was super excited. He came out, it was actually his first Supercross race, and he's a big fan of the sport, and he was really happy being there. He's talking to the mechanics all day, he's talking to the riders. We got him over to Avery Long, which is another one of the riders we treated, and the two of them were chatting on they actually had similar pathways as far as what their careers looked like before they came out and got treated for arm pumps. So those two met up, and then it was really cool. He got to hang out with the rest of the Indy drivers. They went to Team Honda, they went to Team KTM. They got to do a track walk. They were up watching the races. He was really pumped. He was really excited and just loved meeting everyone.
That's cool. We love the crossover stuff. Get you back to another race soon. And if you're a racer thinking Loretta's, don't think August. Think right now. Try to get better as soon as you can. Thanks, Dr. Joe.
Thank you.
Okay, we are headed to Birmingham as we resume the 30-second board, but we do have one other piece from Indy we want to look back on. And when we mean Indy, we mean Indy, Indianapolis Motor Speedway. This was cool. Hailie Deegan in her Indy car, and that's a Supercross bike there with Hayden Deegan. They got to do laps of the track.
Yeah, this is awesome. I mean, you look at the racing talent that is in that family is truly unbelievable. And even the youngest sibling, Huxton, he celebrated a birthday. I don't want to leave him out. Celebrated a birthday this week. But this is awesome, the mainstream crossover and getting new eyeballs on the sport. And I think shining a light on what really encompasses this sport is family. Nobody's ever made it in this sport of supermotocross without family being a gigantic dynamic of that. And to have that displayed in People magazine for all the people that have probably never watched our sport before, I think that was a huge coup for us.
Yeah, we talk about Hayden Deegan and Hailie and Brian all the time on this show or the broadcast on Saturday. But there are certainly people that are reading People magazine that have never heard of any of this and are shocked and intrigued and how well this has gone. And maybe that results in more fans over here, maybe more on the IndyCar side for Hailie. And that's the point of exercises like that. Visor tip to the Deegans for taking time out on Friday. He could have ridden press day and just gone back to the hotel, but instead they went over there and spent a couple hours with the media. So that was cool. And Deegan himself will be on a break because he's the 250 West rider. 250 East resumes this weekend. The quiet assassin, Tom Vial. Somehow he's the point leader. If I didn't see the standings right in front of me right now, I wouldn't believe it. I don't feel like he's ridden great, but there's the numbers, JT.
Yeah, and I'm going to give myself a little credit, and okay. I don't really enjoy doing that as a common practice. But if you go back to Daytona, right off the top of the show, I said, hey, we need to watch out for Tom Vial because last year, a couple quiet opening rounds, he went to Daytona and something changed. He caught fire at Daytona and his entire championship turned around right there. Well, this year, 5-4, 2 opening rounds, nothing really to write home about. Didn't look all that great. And he's gone 2-2 since then, and he's looked like a completely different rider. And he got the points lead through consistency, and no one has ever screamed winning through consistency more than Tom Vial. So he's added another dynamic to it. He's probably been the least headlined championship leader we've ever had in this series. And you look at RJ, these guys, Max Anstey, their riding is larger than life. A lot of flash, a lot of up and down roller coaster stuff. And Tom Vial, he just goes about his business, not a big personality. I can sometimes barely get him to talk on the podium, but that's also reflected in his riding. He doesn't do any outlandish things, but in the end, he was your champion last year. He's your championship points leader this year. And whatever he is doing, it is working. So it's an interesting, fascinating story. All these guys have so many different personalities. I don't think anyone in the sports results have ever more reflected their personality than Tom Vial.
We'll go from the Frenchman to the German now. That's Ken Roczen. He's been here a long time, racing in the United States for over a dozen years. And now, over the break, he becomes an American citizen. So congrats to you, Ken Roczen. These are some photos from his social media. And we've worked with several colleagues through the years that came from out of the United States on the broadcast side. and they eventually became citizens. They told us firsthand, JT, how difficult this process is. So it was hard-earned. Well done, Ken Roczen.
Yeah, this is amazing. And I would challenge anybody to go look at the amount of information you have to absorb and learn to pass the tests that require citizenship. Now, we know there are many steps involved, but I just think the general information you have to learn about our government, about our history, about all the things that most Americans probably don't know themselves, it takes a serious amount of effort to do this. And I think that's the most commendable part to Kenny. I think it shows how much it meant to him to go through the steps to accomplish this.
One more thing, maybe the most important one of all. Let's look at the 450 point standings. We talked about it at the very top of the show. It's a 15-point lead for Cooper Webb over Chase Sexton. 15 points to me doesn't scream that much. And Ken Roczen's still lurking. Finally had the bad race at Indy that was in his control. The Tampa thing was a little bit out of his control, but this is what we're dealing with. 8 races, open stadiums, 15 points. What runs through your mind when you see this?
Well, I immediately think that, man, Ken Roczen really dug himself a hole at Indy. And then I go back to earlier in this show where you said this is the trouble. When you're 15 points down, 16 points down, as it were, for Roczen, you can't afford to have a bad race anymore. You cannot do it because the points lost now put you into a situation where it's almost over right when he was getting started. And that's the trouble. That's what Sexton has to protect himself against. Ken Roczen should be a cautionary tale for Chase Sexton about how quickly this can get away from you if you don't start bringing the points back to your direction. So we're in a precarious spot. We spent 5 minutes at the beginning of the show talking about how close this can all be. One bad race, though, for Sexton, to your point, Jason Weigandt, it can really go the opposite direction quickly. So all these guys are going to be in a fluid situation every single race. It's going to be the ebb and flow of a points-paying championship, but you just have to watch out for that. The margin for error becomes less and less the more points you start to give up.
SMX Facts time. We bring in our statistician, Clinton Fowler, who has a document prepared for us to work off of the show, but we're throwing him a curveball he didn't expect. JT, talk to Clinton about how many different winners we've seen this year.
Clinton, I think you'd like to know we had 14 winners thus far this year. I think that might be just a tad higher. That's 2 years in a row for you now. So I'm not going to make you answer for that now. I just wanted to bring it to light off weekend, time to reflect. Maybe you're getting that wrong.
I think I'm going on 3 years of wrong, but I appreciate the opportunity here, gentlemen.
Yes, we had the attack set up earlier in the show. So 14 winners, that's the most ever though, right?
It is. In both classes, it's impressive. We got 6 in the 450s and in the 250s, guys. I mean, 4 in each of the series. We haven't seen that in both of those series. There's been more to start a season here in an individual one, but still an impressive start with just a ton of different winners, which makes the racing awesome.
Yep. And we joke about this because usually the first Race Day Live episode of the year, Clinton says there's going to be like 3 total winners in the 450 class, and then it ends up blowing those numbers out of the water. We're happy to be wrong when it turns out to be this unpredictable. Now we can get to what you planned on talking about, which is the odd every year mid-season slump for Chase Sexton. I cannot figure out a reason that this would be repeatable, but it is indeed repeating itself.
Yeah, I mean, the numbers show the middle of the season is not optimal for Chase Sexton. He's got 11 career wins, guys. He's only got 1 of them in the middle of the year. 5 in the first 4 rounds, 5 in the last 5 rounds, but 1 in the middle of the year. And quite frankly, that 1 was Detroit 2023. And really, he kind of backed into that one. Not to take anything away, he won, but that was Aaron Plessinger's night, or should have been Aaron Plessinger's night. So the middle of the season just hasn't been that great for him, JT. You look at this year, no different. He's gone 1-6-4-1 to start the season, so he had 2 wins in the first 4 rounds. But since then, he's gone 5-3-3, 5-3. JT, that's a difference of 2 points a round that he's averaging right now in the middle of the season. What do you see from him?
I think there are 2 different variables at play. One, I think we're starting to see a trend emerge for him that he is doing a little bit better on the hard pack tracks that don't deteriorate at all. You look at the races where he's really excelled, like Glendale, Anaheim 1, like he was great. And those tracks are notoriously hard packed. And you couple that with the end, the Denvers, the Salt Lakes, they're harder packed. They're out west typically. So that's not something I would immediately associate, but the numbers don't lie. And that's where he is excelling both the front end and the back end of these championships.
Yeah, he was 10 points ahead of Webb leaving Glendale when he got that second win in 4 rounds. And now he's 15 points behind. That's an entire race's worth of points that have swung. And it's coinciding, not surprisingly, with Webb riding really well. And you have an eye-opener for Webb's performance at Indy.
Yeah, Indianapolis, incredible. He led all 25 laps 2 weeks ago. He was just seemed like he was out there for a relatively easy ride. Obviously, that's not the case when you're going up against the best in the world here. But the amazing part, that's only one of 10 times in the 32 times that he's won races that he's gone wire to wire. So he's done it 30% of the time, wire to wire victory. You look at his titles competitors, Chase Sexton and Ken Rock. JT, both of those guys are 60% of the time going wire to wire. So we just don't see this from Webb. JT, what does that do for his confidence as we enter into Birmingham this weekend?
Well, it just makes his life a lot easier. And if you ask Cooper Webb, I think sure, he would love to be at the front on the first lap and manage the races from the front. It just simply hasn't gone that way for him. And he's had to overcome adversity. He's had to make passes. And also, we know Cooper Webb's calling card is he is a closer. He would be drinking all of the coffee because he is a true closer. And the difference is, if you're going to allow him to be the starter, that makes being the closer that much easier. When you have an 8-second gap with a couple laps to go, well, yeah, a guy like Cooper Webb is going to be able to manage that and bring it home. So a little word of advice to the guys that are quick starters, Ken Roxon's, Chase Sexton, if you're going to plan on beating Cooper Webb, you better do what you do and get to the front early, because if you don't, Cooper Webb will take advantage of that every single time.
Dangerous times for everybody not named Cooper Webb in this championship. We'll see. Maybe the midseason is over for Sexton. Maybe this is the shift into the end of the season where he's been historically good. A lot of the line this weekend, Clinton. Thanks for the info. Well, that's it for this episode. We are headed to Birmingham. Only one Supercross in history in that building. So what comes to mind when you think of what we're in store for on Saturday?
Well, Weege, it's not the racing. It was a moment that will live on in infamy. It was your call of an almost thing that could have happened that didn't. And let's go back and let's look at this opening lap of the 450 main event from last year and your call.
Oh, no! Oh, no! And our cart girl was there on the track. Yeah, this is live TV, folks. Now, I've called many unfortunate crashes, riders hitting the ground and bouncing back up. But, I mean, in that moment, oh, no was as real as it gets, because I thought we would be looking at an injured Monster Energy model and maybe an effect on the championship. I will say that for as bad as it was, that was about as good as it could have gone. Really no harm, no foul, but we don't want that one again. That will, unfortunately, probably will outlive me, that call. The only thing left to do is race at Birmingham this weekend. Yes, hopefully with less incident. Race day live coverage at 1:30 Saturday Eastern time. And the gates drop at 7 o'clock Eastern time Saturday night. What's in store? I think we just proved it. Who knows? So you better tune in. We'll see you there.